So good morning, everybody. Today is our product session on Shared AR, formerly known as multiplayer or multi-peered AR. We have a great guest speaker today, a product manager who works specifically on Shared AR to speak with us today. Before we get into that, let me go on some announcements. We have a really exciting brown bag session with Trigger XR. We're going to be talking about the business challenges using Lightship Shared AR. Trigger worked with Coachella, and they're the one that made the PGA golf app using Shared AR. So they're going to be sharing some exciting insight about working with brands, the challenges, also the development challenges working with brands as well. And then, of course, please feel free to sign up for our research study. It's a paid opportunity. If you get selected, you'll get a $30 Amazon gift card. The link is in Discord. And then watch out for our developer roadshow applications. They're going to be coming into the Discord soon. Hi, Diego. I see he's writing hi. And if you haven't joined our Discord, the QR code is right there on the screen. Please scan it and join our community and be part of the Lightship community. Get the most up-to-date information about ARDK by joining our Discord. And then want to go into reminders. We are recording, so I would love to see your beautiful faces, but if you feel uncomfortable, please turn off your camera. There's no pressure to do that, but if you are okay with that, would love to see your faces. Please mute your mics, just because we don't want to have any distractions from the speakers, but if you do want to speak, just use the raise hand feature and then we'll call on you to speak, and then you can unmute yourself, and also use the chat box feature. We love to have the chat active and fun over there. And then moving forward, what does Shared AR mean to you? We have a little fun activity right here. We're going to do a word cloud. I think that Shared AR is a quite new term that we're using at Niantic. And I think it means a lot of different things to different people. So I want to ask you guys to scan this QR code or go to slido.com and enter this code. And we're going to do a little quick word cloud. You guys can totally do this on your cell phone. Just scan it using your cell phone. I'll give you guys a moment to get there.
I see that ask the question. Do we do that or do we go to the?
Oh, no, not yet. I'm going to play though.
Oh, you're gonna, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So here, please enter as many words as you want that describes how you feel about Shared AR. You can have multiple responses, and the idea is that the words will get bigger as more people enter the same word. Okay, so I'm gonna put multiplayer. That's a good first start. Engaging. Oh, I like that. Oh, nice. Well, multiplayer just like grew. Connectivity, huh? Shared experience. Community. Oh, I love that one. Exciting. Okay. Nice. Close vicinity. That's very true. We have to be in a local area to do Shared AR. Okay, collaboration, that's a great. Creative, social capital. Wow, that's a great term. Interactive shared environment, I love that. Community grew larger too, I love that. Let's see. See two people typing, I'll let them add a few more things in. Fun with friends, awesome. Deepening relationships. I'm really glad that all of these things mean, this is what Shared AR means to you guys. We're gonna have our guest speaker talk more about what Shared AR is. We're gonna have Ria Bhatia join us. She is a senior product manager at doing shared AR at Niantic. And Ria, I think that you can share screen now. So let me make sure that I gave you the screen share abilities.
Not yet. I don't think I have it yet.
Okay, let me give it to you.
No problem.
Okay, go ahead. You should be able to screen share.
Okay, great. Let's do that. I'm going to end back at the same screen. Okay, sorry. Let me just shift all these things around. Okay. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here with all of you. Maybe I met you at the Lightship Summit, maybe I didn't, but I'm excited to get to know you all as we go further. I've been with Niantic for about 2 years. Before Niantic, I worked for Azure and Microsoft, working on distributed systems and our Kubernetes platform. So I'm really excited to kind of shift gears and work on AR and kind of work on a different kind of platform for the future. Really excited to be here. Okay, so at Niantic, we really live and breathe our mission. I think from all of our games to our platform, we really are trying to inspire people to go outside, walk together, and explore the world together. The togetherness is really important for us. Building community is really important for us. Creating engaging experiences is really important for us. Everything you all called out in the word cloud earlier. And I really do believe that shared AR is that togetherness, and it's kind of how we're going to start connecting everyone in AR. And I'm really excited. I'm hoping in the future you can just walk outside and you're immediately part of a shared experience or a shared session. We have a lot of work to get there, so we can get everyone kind of connected in that way. But yeah, this is definitely our first stab at it. So today we're going to talk about the current supported use cases. We're going to go through an introduction to shared AR. We're going to talk about kind of the basics of our stack, especially for our newcomers here. And then we're going to peek into the future and talk a little bit about our roadmap, verbally though. Okay, so currently we support a couple different use cases. The first one, synchronous AR, or real-time AR, where you can see things happening, all interactions happening around you. So if a friend, for example, is playing mini golf in AR, you can see them playing mini golf while you're also playing mini golf. That's kind of the simplest way to explain it. This is Trigger's PGA Safari Party app. I would definitely go download it, try it out. They've done a lot of clever things in their backend to make this experience really great and really easy for people. So definitely try that out. But yeah, great example. We also support turn-based AR, and you can imagine that's just like if I'm playing chess, then I take a turn, my friend takes a turn, or a puzzle game, and you can see all of those interactions happening in real time too. Then there's also spectating AR. So if you just want to have cute creatures running around or Pokemon that you're just trying to visualize, you can have multiple people seeing those animations or seeing the content at the same time. You don't necessarily need to interact with the content is kind of what we're saying here, but you can still visualize it, kind of be part of the same experience. So we've seen shared AR being used for spectating AR. Specifically in Pokemon Go, we have something called buddy mode, where you can take pictures with your buddy, with your friends. So feel free to go try that out. It uses some of the technology that we have in shared. So what is shared specifically? And Chanel also updated all these slides. So thank you so much for doing that. If you all saw this content at the Lightship Summit, everything's slightly more updated and slightly nicer. So excited to have that. And so we provide you the ability to create a very hyper local experience. So you can have a play area size from 5 to 20 meters. I mean, honestly, if you want to go all the way down to 1 meter, you could, but you need space for people to walk around and interact. And so we definitely would encourage you to have kind of a bigger play area. We also give you the shared coordinate space. It's something that we create for you. And so all the interactions are happening in this shared space. You can create shared virtual objects, you can create cubes, you can change the color, and all of those events are networked across all the peers. And we have this low latency networking stack for sharing poses, which is just kind of like different player movement, and then any game actions that are happening. And another tidbit, we were formerly known as AR Multiplayer before Lightship 2.0, and we kind of just rebranded everything to talk about shared AR instead. We believe that shared AR as a brand kind of holds more than just multiplayer or traditional multiplayer. And that's kind of why we wanted to up-level our name a bit and talk about it from that level. But today, I think we're definitely kind of enabling some very close multiplayer use cases, but you'll kind of see that grow as we move into the future. So today, we have a couple components. We have our real-time networking stack. We have different co-localization options. Co-localization is just the process in which we create a shared coordinate space. And then we also have our high-level API. In terms of co-localization options, we have two. So you can either localize with a shared environment, and we'll go through that process soon, but you can take a look on the right to see the process. Basically, the host is the first player in the session. They have to, and Joe's the host all the way in the back, they have to scan or survey their area, and then peers can localize to that same map by kind of going to the same position as the host, localizing by surveying that area, and then they can start gameplay. Or we also have Markersync, which people can just scan a QR code and get them to the session. And yeah, but we're going to have a little questionnaire and then we'll continue to talk about it. So I think Chanel's going to lead that. Yay. So which is better to use if you want to create an experience to see a character in front of you? So kind of spectating AR. Would that be like Markersync? We briefly went through that where you scan a QR code. Would you want to use the shared environment where someone's actually creating a map and then that map's getting downloaded to all the peers, or I don't know. So feel free to fill that out.
Yep, you guys can just answer right there. It's okay. The answer's anonymous. We won't know who got it right or wrong, so don't worry about that. Awesome, we have most people answering. Just giving you guys a few more seconds. Okay, I think most people have answered. I'm going to end the poll. Okay, I see some more answers coming in. Okay. So here are our results. So it seems like it was split between Markersync and shared environment, and some people said it depends, but the correct answer is Markersync.
Yay.
So
cool. I couldn't see the results, but I got it correct. Yay. Okay. Yay. Yeah, so that's just a quick quiz. Basically, if you don't really care about drift, so it's okay if the characters are slightly off, you just kind of want people to get into the same session as quickly as possible, that's when we recommend using Markersync, because it's a way more reliable way for end users to get into the same session. We've seen a lot of UX issues or just end user problems with using the shared environment option because it's heavier. There's more steps and it kind of takes longer to get into the session for all of the peers because they literally have to map kind of the same area that the host did. That's pretty difficult because we don't give you great UX fundamentals for this. And so we totally know this is something we're working on right now with our new stack. But for right now, we definitely recommend Markersync if it's just kind of something quick, you don't really care about drift, and then using shared environment if you do care about having a precise map, it's really important for your game, etc. And so again, all that's happening in our backend is we're just syncing a shared coordinate space using either QR Markersync or the shared environment co-localization option. The peers will snap to the host coordinate space. So the host is the one kind of creating that map. And all AR sessions start at 000. And keep in mind that one Unity unit is 1 meter in real life in terms of scale. And so this is a state machine of what's happening in the back end. So the host first kind of joins the session. Maybe they create a QR code or they create some sort of, I don't know, string of numbers or whatever it is. The peers can then use that to join the same session. The host then needs to go and survey their area. And then on the back end, we're kind of waiting for localization data. We're waiting for that map to be uploaded to the server. Once that happens, they become stable. But then the peers are also in the waiting for localization data state. That's when they need to go and kind of survey their area. And they're using the map that the host just created to localize. So it's a map that was created ad hoc. The peers need to localize to that, and that's the difficult step. Getting them to stable is really difficult from localizing because they need to, like, literally from the same position around the same rotation as the host, they need to scan the same thing. So that's something to keep in mind if you're using shared environment for synchronization. And then once everyone is stable, that's when we recommend starting gameplay. and the game is playable. If you have people in other states and you're not displaying that, or you don't have some sort of marker to say like start game now, it's going to be a little difficult because people might be in different states and not localized to the session. So again, just to reiterate, we really want to hit this home. Add helpful hints or UX flows to help our end users co-localize. We know end users get stuck in co-localization. We can see this. We've done a bunch of studies to figure this out. So encourage your players to survey the same area as the host. The host also may have localized at a location without realizing what they were surveying. So it might have been so quick that they might have just been like swaying their phone around and they might have just started to localize, and then end users might be, they might be hanging out 5 meters away. They might not really know what's going on. Oh, wait, I'm just trying to join. Like now I have to go survey this thing. Help them out. Just say like, go to the same place as the host and like go survey over there maybe, and see how that works. Do some UX studies also with some folks to try this out. And then you can also drag the sync state help text prefab onto your scene to see where the peers are and the hosts are, and that will really help with debugging and kind of figuring it out. Cool, so that was co-localization. Those were the 2 options that we just talked about. And now we're gonna kind of deep dive into our networking stack, and we're also gonna talk about some updates coming in 2.2, which you should totally be aware of if you're using Shared right now. So in terms of networking, we have 2 different join session options. So you can use Markersync, which is in our documentation. If you go to the QR Markersync section in Shared AR, you should be able to find it. You can use it for localization, but you can also just use it for getting into the same session. So in here, you can embed whatever the session code is, and then people can join it by just scanning the QR code, super easy. Or the host can automatically create a join code, and then that code can be used for all the peers to join the same session. So this is literally just, I'm trying to get into the same session as everyone else. And so again, all peers join the same AR session by a common identifier. The first person in the session is always the host, and they're responsible for mapping the environment and also creating that join code or creating the QR code. Everyone else is a peer. So everyone else that joins after the host is a peer for that session. Cool. So we have an optimized networking stack for co-located players. We're also changing our stack a bit. So today we offer 4 transport types. We offer reliable ordered, reliable unordered, unreliable ordered, and unreliable unordered. We're not going to go through everything, but just TLDR, if you're using 2.2 and before, we haven't released 2.2 yet, but if you're using like RDK 2.0, 2.1, or before, all the messages are always routed either through peer-to-peer and server relayed, or like it's going to be either peer-to-peer UDP server relayed or TCP server relayed. We're multiplexing between like 3 different protocols on the back end. This actually increased a bunch of bandwidth. So if you are sending protocols through 3 different, if you're sending messages through 3 different protocols, your bandwidth is kind of going out the door. And so we wanted to reduce that. And that's why we are making some changes and we're deprecating to them to give you less choice and just kind of have a more opinionated stack. But also with reliable unordered and unreliable unordered, we're changing the functionality underneath. So if you're using those 2 transport types, you should be totally fine. You might notice a difference in latency or round trip time. For reliable ordered and unreliable ordered, feel free if you've already built an application with this to continue to use it. But keep in mind, this entire stack will start to go into a deprecation phase over, I would say within the next year, we would start that process. But again, with managed partners and folks that are working closely with us, we're not going to deprecate the whole thing until we like know all our apps and partner teams are kind of onto the new stack. But just keep in mind, our deprecating tags are just to recommend that you use the other 2 transport types to get some of the benefits that we're releasing. Try it out. Let us know how it's working. But yeah. So again, this is what's happening in the back end. It's really, really complicated. So anytime you were using our transport types before, you didn't have deterministic functionality. What that means for us is like when you were using reliable ordered, for example, your message could have been sent through peer-to-peer UDP, through server relayed TCP, or server relayed UDP. That's a lot of different protocols we're using under the hood. So that means your time and latencies could have changed drastically just over the same session. We want it to be more deterministic than that. So you kind of can match your gameplay to the kind of latency and round trip times that you're expected to get. And so that's why we're simplifying the two ones that we're not deprecating to just server relayed TCP and server relayed UDP. So unreliable, unordered is just going to be server relayed TCP, and unreliable, unordered is just going to become server relayed UDP in 2.2 and beyond. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a bit complicated. Hopefully we're almost there, but we're going to have a blog that's coming out to kind of reiterate this. We're going to have the update in our release notes and updated documentation. So all of that's coming soon to help you all out. Okay, and then there's just a little UDP joke, but you might not get it. So UDP is faster and more efficient and way better in a low networked environment, especially for messages that you don't really care about getting sent, like they might get sent, they might not, etc. But TCP enables reliable messages. And when is it that really necessary? We think it's really necessary when you have game state changes, like maybe there's a new level or a specific change that all peers need to see because it's inherent for the game. For everything else, if I'm just like snowballs and you're just trying to see the position of that snowball, maybe it's not as important to have every message get sent. And maybe using UDP would be way better and faster. So that's our recommendation. And now with the new types, you literally get to choose between either UDP or TCP. So hopefully the choice is really simple for you. Moving forward. We also offer a high-level API. So we have our low-level API, which kind of will give you the best performance, but does not give you concepts of authority or replication. And then we also have our high-level API, which we've seen most game developers or most just developers out in the wild building apps with the high-level API. It kind of wraps all the concepts of what you need with the low-level API, but gives you authority, gives you replication, and yeah, I think I haven't really seen any app being built with just the low level API. Feel free to like prove me wrong if you have. If you've done that, love to talk to you. But we know this is really important and excited to see people using it. All right, so that was a lot of content. We're now going to peek into the future a little bit and talk about what's coming next and some exciting updates. So I kind of said that we're going to be deprecating this entire stack maybe in the next year and a half. Like it's going to take a long time because we want to work with you guys. We're not going to like just drop you out in the cold, but we're also kind of revamping a lot of our fundamentals so we can kind of look towards the future with VPS. And that's really important. I think you guys have heard that like at the Lightship Summit, VPS is huge for us. We're trying to map the world. We're trying to give you those maps and we want you to utilize them. Well, the next step is allowing Shared AR to utilize all of those maps and kind of now bring togetherness on top of the world. So something that we're working on and we're deep in development right now is enabling end users to co-localize with VPS. So we have the two other options that we talked about with, and we call those ad hoc localization options internally because you can just do it automatically. You don't need to use VPS. We have those right now, and we will continue to support those in the new stack. We are bringing in a new algorithm for ad hoc mapping. We're bringing in UX flows. We're working really closely with an amazing UX team within Niantic and an amazing development team also that's worked with multiplayer for years now. But our main goal for first iteration is VPS. Like we want to make co-localizing with VPS super easy. We want to make sure that you can create wayspot anchors and everyone can see that content, can interact with it. And we're also kind of rethinking our networking stack so we can bring it to eighth wall in the future. So keep that in mind. Like all of these products will be built for eighth wall. And so we're super excited about that. And that's another reason for why we needed to kind of rethink our architecture a little bit. And the libraries and client libraries that we're using. So super excited for this. On the right, you can see a demo by Liquid City at the Lightship Summit. I think this was so amazing. Like when and you can see Dan Morris, our head of DevRel, kind of just walking through it. When I saw this experience, I think it was the first time I saw like a large scale AR experience and it was so magical. And now just think about all the different real-time interactions you can have on top of an experience like this. You start to really bring in the world of AR with like actual interactions that we have in the real world today. And now you start to bring in this like really crazy virtual world. So I'm really excited about it. I think the use cases for VPS plus shared are limitless. And so excited to bring that to you all, hopefully in the near future. We're hoping to have a public beta around the winter time. And so we're not going to do a private beta. So that means we want to work closely with a couple folks, but that also means that as soon as we drop this, you can have it. As soon as it's public for anyone, it's public for literally all of you. So if you want to experiment, you want to try out, you want to give us feedback, feel free. But keep in mind, it's going to take us another 6 to 8 months to actually get to production, because we're going to be thinking about things like regional servers. We're going to be thinking about how to give you a more performant stack if we need to, depending on where you are in the world. And we're going to be thinking about like dev tooling and debugging tooling and metrics and telemetry, just like a bunch more after we get into the public beta. So the public beta is going to be like kind of the basics, and then we're going to continue to iterate on that and get to a fully production launch, hopefully like later in the summer for 2023. So yeah, and once we get into production, that's when we would start to say like, hey, we're going to deprecate kind of the older stack, like let's talk about it, etc. But there will be a period where you can use both, and that period will be long. Okay, the other update that we just talked about, so we're releasing this more efficient networking stack in terms of bandwidth and kind of more opinionated stack. We're simplifying how we multiplex between all the multiple protocols that we offered and literally just taking that out. So you have deterministic behavior underneath. And we hope that that's more helpful and more useful, especially as you move forward. But let us know, talk to us about that. And something else I want to mention, so going back to what we talked about with VPS, multiplayer traditionally has a concept of lobbies, right? And we didn't really release anything like that. We just kind of gave you join codes and we were like, go figure it out. Like this kind of, you have to do that. And we're not actually releasing a lobby-based system yet, but we're getting closer to a location-based lobby system. So, and we're also bringing in a backend where you'll be able to search for different sessions. But anyway, let me explain the concept first. So at these production away spots, these are the spots that end users can go to and localize with VPS. So at all the production away spots, you as developers can attach different sessions or multiplayer sessions or shared AR sessions. We're calling them rooms. Our concept of a session is a room. This might change. The marketing needs to go through this and change all the names, but internally we're calling this rooms. They're sessions for us, and you can attach them to actual locations. So when someone localizes, we're able to figure out where that localization happened, and then we're able to query a persistent backend, which is another thing we haven't released yet, but we will. You'll be able to query that persistent backend for that location and then find all those joinable sessions for that end user, and then that end user can join that session. What's really special about this is that players can come in and out of rooms freely. That means they just walk into a place, they localize with VPS, we know where they are, and we know kind of what the sessions they could join are if you give those to us, if you persist those, and then they join the session. So if you think about, we've talked about Peridot a bunch, so I'm going to give you an example. So think about Peridot and think about in the future, what if you had like dog parks? What if you could just walk up to a park, localize, immediately see all the virtual dogs all around you? Maybe those are dots. So for example, like it's just so easy to now get into AR sessions with multiplayer, with shared. It's so easy to start interacting, and it kind of reduces the number of steps for end users. So we're excited about this. You can still have all the other join options. We're also going to be thinking about how, if someone's sitting at home, can they go and search for all the different sessions that are available? You can keep these sessions alive. We're going to be calling them experiences that you would say, like, this experience is attached here. And when someone actually walks in, that's when we can start the session. There's no one there. There's no point in actually starting the session. But we can start that if someone goes, but you can still query for all the experiences that are happening at real world locations. And you can put that on your map, and you can lead end users to those locations. You can try to group them together. And if it's a timed experience, you can say, hey, maybe you all want to show up at this time, at this day, at this location, and like go through this really great timed experience. Or you can just let them come and go freely and kind of organically group together. Maybe it's just like a really lightweight experience where they can just like play with dogs, or, I don't know, go to a lemonade stand, like whatever you want to make it, like you can do it. So yeah, really excited about this concept too, and wanted to give you a heads up that that was coming. Yeah, so we talked kind of early about a roadmap and everything, but here's some resource links. So you can get started with Shared AR. We have our different co-localizations. So the shared environment where the host has to map and peers localized to that, documentation's there, Markersync documentation, networking documentation, virtual object information documentation, and like kind of our low-level networking stack, high-level networking stack. And in summary, we talked about our use cases. We did an introduction to Shared AR. We specifically talked about networking and co-localization. We talked about the future and our roadmap. We didn't really talk about the specific use cases. I think like we don't want to tell you that. We are working internally on specific use cases all the time. But we kind of want you to start crafting what the future looks like because there's 100 million things that we haven't thought of yet. And so if there's something new or creative that you've thought of, like talk to us. And if you feel like some of the concepts I talked about today maybe wouldn't support that, let me know. This is a great time and, you know, we can start iterating on what that feedback looks like. And we verbally talked about our roadmap. So don't hold us to any of the dates. We haven't put anything in stone yet, but that's kind of what we're literally, I gave you our internal roadmap. So we're going to do our best to try and get there as quickly as possible. So yeah, and I think we have time for Q&A.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ria, for that awesome presentation. I think everyone was really interested because we have lots of questions. So
great.
if you haven't already submitted your questions, please go to Slido and enter the code. And I also have the link in the chat. And then, yeah, we can go into the questions now. So the first question we have over here, let me just pull it up, is when you say Markersync, are you referring to a unique marker like a statue or tree in the environment?
So I think if you wanted to, as long as you can convert that marker into bytes, you could. I don't, but when I say Markersync, I literally mean a QR code. In terms of join session options, technically what we're sending over the wire is literally just bytes, an array of bytes. So like if you wanted to, whatever you can convert into that, you could use as your join code. So if you wanted to scan something in the wild, you could try, but what we're saying out of the box works is like, we know like different, just I guess numbers that you use as a join code or an actual QR code. So I'm actually talking about a physical QR code when we say QR Markersync.
Okay, thank you for that. And then any follow-up, whoever is entered this question, you guys, any follow-up on this? No? Okay. The next question is there a visual indicator as it goes through the process of getting to a stable state?
Yeah, I talked about that prefab. I think it was like drag, state, sync. Let me double check the slide. I don't memorize that. The sync state help text prefab, if you drag that over to your scene, yes, you'll get visual indicators. The exact indicator in that GIF that we played, it's the same one with like, it'll be blue and then it'll be green when everyone's localized.
Awesome. And the next question is, when the host logs leaves a session, does that end the game or is the host transferred to another peer?
We do not transfer hosts to other peers. So I think that in that case, like the session might, I think it would end, but if someone knows more information on that, has tried it out, I'm pretty sure, I don't think the host it will end. I think wonky stuff would happen. Let me get back to you on the background on what would actually happen there. But like, we don't transfer host status. I know that for sure. And that's something that's been asked for in the future. And like, that's something in the new stack that we're thinking about for our current stack. Yeah, I will double check.
Yeah, no worries. We usually send up like a follow-up so we can include your answer.
Perfect.
Awesome. And then another question, can you use VPS simultaneously for multiple independent users to set up a shared space, or does a single host still have to VPS localize first and then the others can join?
Yeah, that's a great question. So everyone will independently localize with VPS. And then from there, we're able to say like, oh, you're in this app and it's shared enabled and the developer has already created this experience template. We know that there's a session here. Let's go join them. to the session. So yeah, it's independent. We want to make sure that every end user is at that location and like actually you need to localize to do that. And so that process will be single player, which will also reduce the complexity that we've seen with a host having to map and peers needing to map towards that. So with VPS, all of that gets eradicated. Everyone can kind of map, and then as long as they end up on the same map at that production waste spot, we're good. And they have that shared coordinate space.
Awesome, thank you. And then what's the recommended max players in the shared AR experience?
We recommend 5 right now. You can try to get up to more and let us know how it works. In our new stack, we're going to try to get up to 10 for our first iteration, and we're going to try to get to 20, hopefully, before we hit production. And then we would start to think about like concurrency problems. So like how many concurrent sessions can you have at a particular location? What can our system support for that? And then in the way future, we're going to start thinking about, can we get thousands of people in the same session to see the same content? And so, yeah, we're going to work on let's get a number of concurrent sessions and let's get at least 10 players first. And then once we kind of really prove out the stack, get it really solid, we're going to start to move on to like kind of massive MMO style multiplayer experiences.
Oh, that's awesome. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, it's going to be really crazy. So,
what happens right now if like you go above 5 players?
Things might just not work very well. I think the mapping might not work very well. I think like messages just may not get sent. So like, I think things reliability starts to drop. The experience degrades quite a bit. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And then are there any GitHub projects for the related project example projects?
Yeah, I don't know if we have. Chanel, you might know more than me, but I know we have templates online that folks have done, which has been awesome. I don't think we have like starter code on GitHub yet. Everything's through a template, you download it, you import it into Unity, et cetera, and you work off of it. I think that would be really interesting, especially for a more full-blown application to start to like put up code on GitHub, and you can use that as a starter and pull that down. So yeah, we'll definitely be thinking about that. But not yet.
Thanks. Okay, then we have a longer question here. This person said that we'll like to be able to scan an environment as a user, then work in that space or session, but then the user leaves the location, have a new user come along, scan the same session and see the interactions content that the previous user made. Does that make sense? Kind of like the room, I guess you're talking.
Yeah, that's exactly the rooms concept. So what we're saying is like all the information in that session, if you choose to, can be persisted. So if someone goes up to a room and they, maybe you have a persisted experience, for example, something we've heard is like an obstacle course. And maybe people are creating an obstacle course together. Maybe they're creating something else together. People can create it, and then that can get persisted over a period of time or forever. So that's going to be totally flexible. It's going to be up to you. We are bringing a persisted a backend for this that you will be able to use through Shared AR to persist this information. That's something we don't have today. Today, all the information for the session gets deleted after 30 minutes after your session if you use our data store. But in the future, you will have the option to have stuff in memory or continue to have stuff in memory for the session, but you'll be able to persist stuff past that and pass the session through multiplayer or through shared. And something cool is like, we're really designing all of this right now. Like we're going to have like waste spot anchors backing this. Like we're going to have like all of this hopefully really clean and buttoned up by the time we get to shared's launch for you. So.
That's awesome. Thanks. I think, Chris, you said that was your question. You have a follow-up question. You want to unmute yourself and ask your follow-up question?
Yeah, sure. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, no, it's just so kind of room when that ever comes out in the future. Will it always be near a VPS, like a specific pre-baked location that you've done, or will it be able to be near any location in the world?
I think we're giving you all the ability to create production waste spots. So if you wanted to scan something, I think up to 10 times, you can get that into a production as a production waste spot. So you can create your own. But these these concepts we're saying like they should work with private sessions too if you're debugging, or private spaces if you're debugging and testing. But other than that, for like our end users across the world, like, yes, they do need to be attached to production waste spots. So we get kind of all the reliability and the localization kind of scores that the mapping teams created with multiplayer. So they will need to be attached, but we will also have other forms. So if you wanted to get into shared AR gameplay anywhere, we will have ad hoc. So that means you and your friends can go to your backyard. Someone will still need to scan this or survey the location. You'll need to get peers to survey that location. We're going to make that process easier and more intuitive. We're working on that, but you'll have both the options. So some will be attached to locations and some can be like anywhere gameplay that can start anytime and anytime. Like you can figure that out. Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
So thanks for that follow-up, Chris. And I think that Jeff, you have a follow-up question on this as well. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi, Ria. So yes, I guess you might have answered it, but the difference between a room and a waste spot, it sounds like both are persistent and stateful, but the room has like a time to live, like it'll just expire if, and then like a fixed waste spot is like permanent in this in the system.
Yeah, production waste spots are something that are permanent. They will always be there. All developers have access to those through the coverage API, and you can, and now in the future, you'll be able to create something called an experience template, which will give us kind of all of the data that we need. Like what's your persisted backend? Like what are the maximum players? What's your co-localization option, which is going to be VPS in this case. But you could also use the same tuple for ad hoc. So you could say like, oh, I want to use ad hoc and I'm just not going to give you a location that this is going to be attached to. So yeah, you'll be able to attach to locations. Did that answer your question? Sorry, I got lost.
No, I think you did. And so as long as there's a minimum of one host in the room exists, and then after a certain period of time, it just, if everyone leaves, it's just kind of gone.
So not exactly. It's going to be, you can configure that. So if you want this room to last forever, you can say that. Like we might not have this session actually live for that long, but you might be able to attach the experience forever. So anytime someone walks up to that location, a session will start and more players can join. But I think that's just like a platform intricacy. Like in general, I guess from your perspective, like experiences will be attached to locations for as long as you want, including forever.
Cool, thank you.
Awesome, thanks Jeff for your question. Okay, so we have a really intricate question. So whoever asked this next question, feel free to unmute yourself and clarify. But someone said, I'll be starting some R&D soon with the goal of developing an experience that can theoretically have 50K connected users at a live event. Do you have any suggestions for the kind of architecture I need to develop for this? I'll probably start with something server client, but UDP based with Unity networking code. Yeah, so does anyone, whoever wrote that question, want to clarify? I think more details are needed.
I can, if you want to talk about the use case, feel free. Otherwise, I can just go off of what you just said. It's totally fine.
Hi, that was my question. I'm not sure I can add much more, but just basically, if I just wanted a very simple experience, but that can have a huge amount of users connected. So I'm not concerned about complex gameplay at this point, but just everyone being able to share a small AR object and interact with it. So just sending small messages back and forth, but just to be able to support a huge amount of users. So that's just something I'll be looking into. And I was just wondering if you can help point me in the right direction. And I understand it's a very complex thing, obviously.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. So
Thanks.
yeah, totally. Thank you for that. This is a use case we've heard so many times. And so like our platform definitely does not support this right now, but we want to. I think some of the things I would ask myself is first, like, what's your mapping solution? Like, how accurate do you need to know where these players are? Like, how do you want to get them into the same session? It sounds like maybe a QR code or something would work best, but then how do you like make that work for 50,000 people? And make sure like the mapping part can scale for that. That's my first question I would ask. I guess the next question would be like, maybe you can get to spectating first. So just kind of see everyone, can everyone like see the same cube in the same place at the same time? Or do you need to have that? Also 50,000 people is a lot. So like you also need to think about where are they in space? Like, are you in a stadium? And in which case maybe everyone's centered around something. If you're at a park, that's kind of different because you're going to have people all over the place and they're not necessarily going to be looking at the same spot. So thinking through like maybe groups of people see content and interact with that content. We also think that 50,000 people interacting with the same bits of content aren't going to work very well. But if you have smaller groups of people interacting with one or two pieces of content, that would work. And then you just have concurrent sessions. So yeah, definitely a lot to think about. Feel free to pull us in if you need some design support. We do have partner engineering that can try their best. But yeah, I think, you know, the mapping part is going to be a huge question mark. And just the space questions of like, how do you get 50,000 people to interact with what objects, and see, even just getting them to see it at one spot would be interesting. Past just, you know, all the complexities with how you're going to have to scale up your server. And are you thinking about edge compute? Are you thinking about 5G? Are you going to, what are your, you know, times for like round trip time, latency per end user, making sure you have your metrics really solid too, for what makes a really great experience. So yeah, I would start there. Lots of questions. It's a hard problem. It's something that, you know, we'd love to tackle in a year or so, but.
Oh, thank you. And I think Diego has a follow-up question with that too. You gonna go ahead and ask your question, Diego?
Sure. Thank you, Chanel. Well, the question is basically if I can combine a shared AR feature with other services of multiplayer. I have used before Photon multiplayer, and this service can scale up to 1,000, and I don't know as much as you pay, but I'm not sure if I can mix this both.
Yeah, I mean, the mapping part's going to be the hard part to get that scale. Like if you can get fit like 1,000 people kind of either scanning the same QR code and then using Photon's networking stack, like that might work. So yes, and also something that I want to mention, like for our new stack, we're trying to make it really modular so you can do that. So you can swap out like a different networking stack if you want to use Photon. And so you can kind of get the best bits of our localization options and combine that with other options too. So for the current stack, I would try it. It's not something that we've tried or support, but for the new stack, it is something that we want to try out and, you know, more formally support, because we know like you want the flexibility. Like we definitely haven't reached that scale yet. So
yeah. I have one last question. I'm really interested in when you mentioned in the last part of kind of like how the future will look like. I got a chance to see one of the videos of Lightship Summit where they describe these kind of like reality channels or spaces where you enter with your phone and then you are instantly in another area with different sounds, different visuals. So when you talk about this, I can definitely relate how I can move into a same blog and I can enter into this kind of like shared AR space that instantly can kind of like connect me to this I don't know, a space, you know, where I can play multiplayer. But I'm wondering about if you talk about this data will be forever, this means in my head like someone's going to pay for that. And all, I mean, I'm happy to embrace this technology, but I want to actually know how much it costs to host forever something, since that cost actually should be transferred either for the business or for the experience. And at the end, if I'm super happy to embrace this, I want to know that I can, I don't know, scale a lot without worrying that they at the end will tell me, okay, you know, this is perfect, but you will need to pay, I don't know, this amount, and this really is not on my roadmap. So I'm kind of concerned about that.
yeah, that's a great point. So something that we can guarantee you is that before we get into production, we will have all those numbers of what we would charge in the future. For today with AR multiplayer in our current stack and shared with like, I guess V1, we said we were going to charge and we're not actually doing that. So don't tweet that though. But anyway, for the new stack, like we're going to kind of do the same thing. Like we're going to be safe about it. We're going to release all the numbers. We're going to have multiple services also. So we're talking about like a persistent backend that we could charge for. We're talking about shared AR now with VPS, and we're talking about VPS as our backend services. And that's kind of the core of the platform, I would say right now. So those are things that we would, release. And we're also thinking about it from a package perspective. So we're thinking about like, okay, so if you're using shared AR, plus you're using like VPS, plus you're using our persistent backend, all these backend services, like what does that look as a cost of what are people willing to pay? What makes sense? And how do we help you grow while we grow? So those are things that we're actively thinking about. And yeah, we need to get to a place where like you would be happy paying that in the first place, right? And so we need to give you that time to figure that out. So yeah, hopefully we can make you happy and yeah, in the near future.
Thank you so much, Ria. And then I think that we have, let me see, any other questions? I think, sorry, may mispronounce your name, David. You had a follow-up question. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask that really quick? And please let me know.
Hi, yeah, thanks. You pronounce it perfectly. Don't worry about that. Thank you. Yeah, I was just wondering, could you just clarify what you meant by mapping when you were saying that mapping would be a key problem for that sort of networking problem? So did you mean like placing objects in space, or did you mean like onboarding and having a ton of players connect to the same session?
I mean co-localization specifically, so getting 50,000 people co-localized with today the options that we give you, like I think QR codes would be the closest thing that could get to you to that kind of scale. But for example, ad hoc map sync, like you literally have to upload and then download all of those maps on all these different peers. So like, what's the bandwidth for that location? Would that even work? With VPS, for example, it only really works with hyper-local experiences. So you can only co-localize, or in the future co-localize with like whoever can physically fit in that space. Like you can't localize with another way spot or somewhere else and have them in the same session, unfortunately, yet. We don't have big enough play areas, I guess is my biggest thing. So I think when I say mapping, I really mean the co-localization option you have for understanding and creating that shared coordinate space among all the peers. Hopefully that makes sense.
Awesome, thanks, Ria. And then I think these other questions I can probably answer, and you can help me if you have anything to add on. But someone asked, is there a VPS template we can leverage as a starting point? Next month is actually going to be our whole VPS month. We're going to relaunch and go back into it because you can never have enough of it. So definitely look out for that. And then someone else asked, how have developers been monetizing their work and experiences? I'm going to drop the video that we did. We did a brown bag session like a few weeks ago on pitching the value of AR. I think you could find that really useful. And then, do we have classes and courses to master our platform? Unfortunately, right now we don't have any courses or pathways like Unity. But I know other partners or other companies, they do hold courses. For example, Diego did a class with Circuit Stream recently, right? And he said and I think Eli said there's another one coming up this weekend. So you can look out for courses through those avenues as well. I don't know if Diego, if you want to share about what you did with Circuit Stream.
Yeah, sure. What we did was basically get up and configure your developer environment. They have really great teachers, but unfortunately, one of those got COVID. I basically helped them out. But if you're looking to kind of like developer path, I will definitely tell you to go into the YouTube from Lightship and then look for the playlist. In there, you will find kind of like a recap of the template challenge, kind of like 10 days of templates we did. So we had one kind of like session for each day. And in there, you will have a lot of knowledge and there's a lot of wisdom you can, learn from. So that's definitely the way to go, I will tell you. And if not, follow Circuit Stream. That will be it.
That's awesome. So thanks for sharing that, Diego. And then I'm just going to go over our announcements again, and let me screen share. Let's see. For any questions that we didn't get to, please look out for our post-event email. That's where I try to follow up with answers from our speaker, just because we might not be able to get all of our questions in time. So please look out for that email. Next week, we have another brown bag session that we're doing with Trigger XR. They're going to be talking about the business challenges and development challenges and how you can work with brands to solve to use Lightship Shared AR. That's going to be next week. Please RSVP if you haven't. Again, if you're interested, please sign up for our research study. The link is in Discord and announcements channel. And then also look out for our BPS Developer Roadshow applications. And of course, join our Discord if you haven't already. The QR code is right there. And then also please look out for our survey. We're really trying to improve our experience, and that means that we need feedback from you guys to improve our experiences. I'm going to drop the link in the chat, but also you guys will get an email in about 2 hours after the event to complete the survey. And if you can really do that, that'd be greatly appreciated. I'll stay on for a few more minutes, but thank you so much, Ria, for being an awesome speaker. Thank you guys for attending, and I'll see you guys in the next session.